Hello, Dr. Nick and Diglio. How are you doing today?
Wonderful, Dr. Rick. How are you?
Very good, thanks. Hey, Nick, we're going to take a break this session that we're together. We've been kind of working through the EdUtopia's 2023 most important educational studies. So we've been kind of working our way slowly through that. But we're going to take a little pause on that to kind of take a look at a few videos that have been uploaded to YouTube by an educator who's speaking out about some of the strategies he uses, which I think have caught both your attention and my attention, and we thought would be valuable for us to kind of show and discuss on the show. So I'm excited to do that. So Nick, why don't you kind of give the folks who are listening and watching an idea of who we're going to see and what we're going to see?
All right. Well, you're going to see an educator named Brian Mendler, Mendler, and we're about to pull up his YouTube channel. You're going to see a video that is called That One Kid, the number one strategy for oppositional defiant kids. All of his books are available on Amazon. He also has a website that is available just strictly by Googling Brian Mendler. And we'll also be giving, as we watch the video and then talk about it afterwards, more citation for referencing him. But very simply, Amazon and or a quick Google hit for Brian Mendler. Again, Mendler. And again, a lot of his focus is on that one kid, oppositional defiance, and classroom management in particular. And with that said, we're going to go to his video now.
All right.
There it is.
Yeah, Nick, I've got lots of reactions to Brian's video here. I mean, let me just start by saying, what a great presenter! You can just feel his emotion coming through, right? He cares about this. It's what he does for a living is not only inspire kids, but you can see he's inspiring us as well. At the same time, he's inspiring other educators, and we talk a lot about that on the show. And so, yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate kind of the approach he uses and the attitude he has for sure.
Yeah, and also the just the easy reminder where he's not hitting you with 700 things at once. He's focusing on one tip, one easy way to kind of talk about something that is easy to forget, particularly in the classroom when you're caught up in the heat of emotion, particularly with a kid who is potentially oppositional defiant, which some kids can be all the time and every kid can be some of the time. For sure there. And picking this particular strategy, which is using questions instead of declarative control statements over kids, definitely changes the game and switches the script on the student a little bit. Does it always work? Well, of course not. Nothing always works, but it very, very much oftentimes puts a pause on the student and for the teacher as well. And what it definitely does for the teacher is that as the heightened emotion begins, right? Because you're in the middle of a circuit that begins, it's a loop. Heightened emotion starts, right? Misbehavior, teacher starts getting fired up. Boom. The teacher can break that own heightened emotion circuit that's being built by moving into the flipped script scenario there. So it's almost like the neurological strategies of taking a sip of water or looking upwards, pointing your eyes upwards towards the ceiling. That automatically forces neurologically the body to calm down, to move into a more calm state. This is another way to break that neurological loop and do that.
Yeah, Nick, that's a great point because this works on both people, right? Involved in the power struggle, right? It works on the kiddo. Kind of, there's an empowering piece of I'm asking you a question. I'm empowering you to help provide the solution or to give me a response towards the solution. And there's also that piece you were just alluding to of tapping into curiosity. The kind of curiosity is kind of a different part of the brain than anger, right? And judgment, it's operating from the prefrontal cortex, not back from the amygdala, right? So it's a different part of the brain, and I think can kind of release some of the tension that we're feeling, when we are at risk of maybe getting into one of those power struggles, to be sure. Yeah, I love this idea of just kind of tapping into the curiosity, asking questions. It was reminding me of, Nick, I don't know if you remember, not the more recent version of whose line is it anyway? Because I don't know that they play this game. I don't know if you remember when Drew Carey was the kind of the guy in the seat, and Wayne Brady and Colin Mockery and Ron Stiles, and they did the question game where they pop in and they could only ask questions. And he'd buzz them out if they made a statement. I love that game. But anyway, that I was looking up a few old clips of that and laughing right before we get on today. Another thing I think that he kind of alludes to here, Nick, is indirectly is at the start, he kind of talks about kind of the danger of telling kids what to do, of these statements or these orders or directives. And yeah, it's one of the reasons, and there are a lot of them, why as counselors and therapists, but also as teachers or coaches, of course, there's times for coaches to be giving directives. I'm not suggesting otherwise, and teachers as well. But when we give advice, that's one of the dangers in giving advice is if you're working with a teenager developmentally, one of the problems with that is you tell me what to do, I'm going to do the opposite. Because I'm my own person, I'm making my own decisions, and I'm just going to do the opposite of what you say. So we got to be careful about giving advice to teenagers, however well-intentioned. It can backfire on us for that very reason. There's other problems with advice as well, but that's at least one of them. And I think that's at least part of what he's getting at here. It's also one of the reasons why, as counselors and therapists, if we're running a small group, rather than setting the ground rules, we invite the students in the small group to create the ground rules, right? And in so doing, they become invested in the group and invested in following the rules, because the rules aren't yours later. The rules are ours. We came up with them. Oh, that makes it a little different. Maybe I better do what I said I was going to do. Right. So lots of good stuff here. And let me hit on one more, and then I'll give you a chance to jump in. He's talking about the need that kids have for power and control. Well, that's right out of Counseling Theory 101. That's William Glasser's reality therapy is what it is. In fact, Glasser says, I love his theory for lots of reasons, but one of them is this real quickie diagnostic tool. When you're working with any kiddo, there's 5 basic needs, and most of the misbehavior that we see is coming from a unhelpful way to get needs met, or a way that gets needs met, but that's also not very productive for kids. And so here they are: survival, freedom, fun, love and belonging. And here's the big one he's getting at: power and control. And if one of those needs in a kid's life is not being met, they're going to find ways to get them met, even if they end up being not very productive or harmful, in some fashion. And I had something else I wanted to say about that. What was it? Yeah, maybe that was it. Maybe that was it. I'll have to gather my thoughts, but lots of things going on here. And this is a 5-minute clip that I think are relevant for anybody who kind of works with kids, leads kids, coaches, parents, teachers, lots of folks kind of thinking about how you're interacting with kids, and can you make slight changes to those interactions to be more effective? Because we all just want to be effective, right? We want kids to be productive and do well. And so can I make some little changes to how I'm interacting to help that process?
And it's the reminder, I think, that we're disarming, right? Like part of what we're doing is disarming. When you look at, I always look back into the 90s, the 80s and 90s, and shows like Cops, right? My dad used to love watching Cops. And that would always show the most ridiculous scenarios, the most heightened situations. But if you actually were watching that show, the clips that made the commercials were, the crazy stuff. But most of the situations on the actual half-hour or 60-minute show were familiar people to the police officers. And the attempt that always happened were conversations where the police officers had relationships with the people, and they were just trying to disarm them with trust and relationship building, right? The drunk guy sitting behind the wheel of his car and them trying to have a conversation to get him out from behind the wheel so he didn't drive and hurt somebody. Or, the person at the convenience store who was probably dealing drugs and trying to get him to go home so there were no drugs being dealt that night. Disarming. That's a lot of times the main idea there. And I also like how in the segment here, he talked about the 2 types of power and control. It's not always the same. It's the same outcome, power and control, but type A, power and control, is the kid who at home has all the power and control, or B, the kid who has no power and control and wants it at school. So there's is it the same thing? In a sense. However, the way you can ask those questions and disarm the situation look a little bit different depending on who that kid is and what their intended outcome actually is there.
Yeah, it's a good point, Nick. I would make an addition to something Brian suggested there, because he talked about two different reasons why a kiddo would be needing, kind of have this lack of power and control. And you hit upon them quite well there. One is the laissez-faire form of parenting or guardianship, right? Where you do what you want, like, and you're used to power and control. So you're just going to go and use that. And the other one is the authoritarian parent. Everything is structured exactly every day, and I have no control over what I do. And there's a third one, though, I think maybe that he didn't address, that's important for all of us, is that we've got kids who have experienced some form of trauma, not of their own making, right? And so we're talking about kids who have been abused, who are homeless, maybe the death of an immediate family member. Those kids are powerless over those situations, right? And so there's a lack, there's this vacuum of power and control. And so it's a natural kind of reaction to get that filled by ordering others to do what you want them to do, acting in ways that are not very functional, but are productive in helping you experience that feeling.
Yeah, for sure. So much packed into just a short 5-minute clip there, and that's just a little bit of the wisdom that Brian has to offer across many avenues there. So again, head on to Amazon, any one of his books. He also has published a few books with his brother there, and I'm sure we'll revisit more of his video and some of his tips as we go along too.
Yeah, and Nick, I got two more quick points here I want to make.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, real quick. One is, and I noticed in the video something that he did as he was kind of, recalling or role playing with himself, kind of imagining, kind of talking with the kid, is he changed his tone of voice to almost a whisper. Right. And we just talked about that on the show, right? We just talked about that as one of those Edutopia's most important research studies of 2023, is this idea of changing your tone of voice, of being intentional with your tone of voice, and being soothing with your tone of conveying warmth with your tone of voice. So he does those kind of things too. It's not always just about asking the questions, but it's managing the tone of voice in order to make connection. And I noticed, Nick, you were even doing the same thing when you were talking about the cops episodes, right? You were the police officers changing their tone of voice to be non-aggressive, right? And to be relational and convey warmth as a way to kind of, what was the word used? It's such a good one. Disarm as a way to disarm the folks. So yeah, that's excellent. Having watched a few of these clips from Brian Mendler, I was reminded of one other thing, Nick, and I wanted to read it. And you probably know this, I imagine you do, but it's the prayer of Saint Francis.
Oh my gosh, wear it on my dog tag every day.
Oh, you do? Oh, fantastic! I didn't know that. Okay, well,
yeah,
I love the prayer of Saint Francis, and I was reminded of that recently. And of course, in watching his videos, I'm reminded of him probably kind of just getting a sense of who he is as an educator. That likely this is something that he would, embrace.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and read that. The prayer of St. Francis. And actually, it's kind of weird as you investigate this. I don't know if St. Francis actually said this, even though we know it is the prayer of St. Francis. It's difficult to discern if he actually is the one who wrote these words or said these words first.
Mm-hmm.
But he's at least attributed to being it's consistent with his character and what he did preach.
Oh, yeah, he definitely believed these things, even if he didn't write them down.
Right. So the prayer of St. Francis: Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there's hatred, let me sow love. Where there's injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love, for it is in giving that we receive, and it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Beautiful words.
Yep, it's my favorite
there
one.
It is.
Yeah,
fantastic, good stuff.
Yeah, I don't know why my Osbot camera is shaking like that, but now I'm dizzy. On top of that, yes, and one of the other ones with Brian Mendler that ties right to that, Rick, which I'm sure at some point we'll get to, when he talks about the second to last word is best. You know what I mean? Like his part of his point is that you don't always have to have the last word. And everything you just read there in terms of, make me an instrument of your peace, right? We're not looking to flame the fire. We're looking to put the fire out. We're looking to, bring light instead of, burning the world down, essentially. So I think that there's definitely a lot of similarities there. If we ever get a chance to interview Brian, that would be an interesting question to ask. That would be cool. For sure. Yeah. Yep. Sometimes walking away is the strong answer there.
For sure. Thanks, Nick.
What was the Kenny Rogers song about?
You got to
know the county.
I don't know that one.
Everyone considered him the coward of the county. He would always walk away, turn the other cheek. Actually, that ends kind of violently. That's not a good example.
Okay. I don't recall that one.
We want the last thought on this segment to be the prayer of St. Francis. So we're gonna have our people remember that as
sounds good.
The memory for that one. All right, everyone. Well, great piece here, and we'll be back with more excellent educational tips from Rick and Nick's Excellent Adventure.